want to start with GameStop, Esther, because you made some pretty provocative comments about Robinhood recently, asking whether they should be asking themselves about whether they're democratizing a new form of addiction. What do you think Robinhood, what kind of responsibility, I should say, do you believe Robinhood bears here?
I mean, the same responsibility a company that sells alcohol bears. It's not illegal, but there are a lot of people who, some people use alcohol to have a nice Friday evening. Other people use it as a way to sell life insurance. And then some people use it to get relief from something that can't be relieved by drugs or by gambling or by alcohol or anything else. And the vendors of that need to understand what they're doing. And the more they make their product addictive, it's addictive. Let's get real. Addiction is not about the substance. It's about the behavior pattern of the person who gets addicted. And they're looking for short-term relief. I believe
Robinhood would probably push back on that and say we are democratizing investing. We are making this accessible to people who have never invested before, many of them women. What's your response to that?
Maybe some people shouldn't be investing. If you don't have the money to spare, if you don't have the ability to risk it, you shouldn't be doing it. It's like not everybody should be drinking alcohol either if they have a tendency to get sucked in. We talk about, is the market a voting machine or a weighing machine? But for some people, it's a gambling machine. And that's happening to a lot of the stock market right now. It's quite distressing.
Interesting. You've been a tech investor for a really long time, and I wonder if you're seeing the same kind of frenzy behind the scenes. There's so much interest in technology, but not all of the companies pan out, especially at the angel and early startup stages where you're focused. What trends are you seeing?
I'm seeing a lot of interesting trends. I mean, on the one hand, there are the SPACs, which is another form of gambling, if you like, but most of that is done by people who can afford it. I mean, that's very different. But if you don't have the ability to take those risks, you're being sucked into something. There's a lot going on in digital health right now, which is exciting because digital health is cheaper than a lot of the sort of physical infrastructure and people having to travel and the difficulties of getting infected with COVID and so forth and so on. There's huge demand, but there's going to be consolidation inevitably because there's 20 or 30 companies, doing almost anything you can mention, whether it's at-home COVID tests or mental health counseling or, nutrition management. All these things are valuable. And as an investor, an angel investor actually has the ability to help make the company more successful. Later on, the investor is more in the job of picking unless they're a direct VC firm. But right now, you're seeing some firms get capital. Often they're well connected rather than necessarily well run. And it's an interesting time. I'm making a bunch of investments myself. I'm very interested in democratizing access to mental health support.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of the biotech sector, you used to be on the board of 23andMe. They're doing a SPAC. Curious if you think that's the right move. We were just having an interesting conversation with A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, amidst this controversy about with some folks saying that, life would be better without SPACs. That just coming from Warren Buffett's right hand, Charlie Munger, today.
I think the quality of the company matters more than whether it's a SPAC or not. I think anything that becomes a fad tends to, bring a lot of stuff along with it. 23andMe is a real company with real data that's doing real research. And so, I think that the reality is SPACs kind of streamline the ability to go public. And if it's a good company, that's great. If it's not a good company, then, be wary, just like any other investment.
Right. Now, you also have invested heavily in aerospace, and curious, with the successes of SpaceX, the quest to Mars, where do you think we should be placing our bets? What should we be watching in the space race now?
We should look carefully for good management. There's a lot of interesting space startups. They tend to be run more by engineers. Often some of the biotech companies are run by scientists who are not necessarily the best managers. But I think ultimately, you know, health and healthcare on Earth is really important. So is kind of our human destiny to travel to Mars and elsewhere. I mean, it's half a joke, it's half real. We need a backup planet. And personally, I hope to retire on Mars. Not too soon, but eventually.
Really? Why?
Elon, I'm ready.
Why do you want to retire on Mars?
When you get really old, 1/3 of Earth's gravity is actually really handy. You can stand up straighter because you don't weigh as much. And as I said, I want to retire several decades from now, at which point, with luck, the place will be ready for me. And one-way trip, it's a pretty boring long trip. So, no, I want to go there when I don't really want to come back. And maybe I'll just be watching Netflix the whole time. Who knows?